Hi, good morning. Oh, that's quite loud. I hope everyone's feeling good this morning. Thank you very much for joining me. Oh, they're not on. Sorry, I'll just try and get the screens on down here. No? Okay, cool. My name's FranklinTill. I'm co-founder of FranklinTill. We are a futures research agency based in London. And we've been working with Heimtextil for a number of years now. We form part of what they call the Trends Council. So a number of different research agencies come together each year, usually around February time, and we share research to explore what we think is the most important sort of sociocultural shifts, technological shifts, what we think is impacting the near and further future of the textiles and interior design industry. Then each year, one agency is invited to take this information forward and take the role of what they call the lead agency to edit and curate the content for the small booklet that you've seen, all the information that's on the website, and design the trend exhibition that you see here. So just a tiny bit of information about us at FranklinTill. So we work with a really broad range of global brands and organizations to help them use design, material, and color innovation to shift towards a more sustainable future. Effectively, we're really passionate about bringing research to life. We edit a magazine, some of you might have heard of. It's a biannual publication called Viewpoint Color, exploring the context behind our evolving color tastes. You know, what's impacting from a sociocultural, political perspective, our emerging color preferences. We also published a book with Thames and Hudson called Radical Matter, Rethinking Materials for a Sustainable Future. And indeed, a lot of our work with major corporations, for example, a major sportswear brand, this is a project we're working on about recycled color, is all about material innovation to shift towards sustainability. So I'm going to keep going. I've already mentioned that we're a part of the Trends Council. So in 2020, sorry, I've got a bit of a sticky clicker here. There we go. OK. In 2020, we launched the first dedicated Heimtextil Future Materials Library, where we wanted to put on show some of the most exciting material innovations related to textiles and interior design from around the world. And indeed, this year, within Textiles Matter, the presentation that you'll see here within the forum, we've basically done a kind of expanded version of that Future Materials Library. What we wanted to create was a display and exhibition that's showing you some of the most exciting material innovations that are happening to inform the future of textiles and interior design. So this year, the title of the presentation and the exhibition is called Textiles Matter. And obviously, in an era where we've, the last 3 years or so, we've been existing digitally, we've been working, socializing, even playing digitally in the wake of the global pandemic, it felt important to have a really tangible display as we come back together in a physical space, and particularly celebrate the role of textiles, to provide comfort, warmth, and most importantly, to present what we think is the most pressing theme of our time, the sustainable agenda. So everything that I'm going to be talking about today is about sustainability and particularly circularity within textiles. I'm going to start by showing you a film. Okay. So Textiles Matter is really taking a very materials-first approach. We wanted to spotlight the full textile life cycle, really asking visitors to more deeply consider what are the raw materials that our textiles are made from, how have they been manufactured and by whom, and indeed, most importantly, when we talk about circularity, where will they go at the end of their life, or indeed, how can we extend the life of our textile products? So in terms of the context, we're currently globally using 1.75 planets worth of resources every year. So we're nearly consuming 2 planets worth of resources. And that's set to rapidly increase over the next decade. In the US alone last year, there were 11.3 million tons of textile waste produced. In fact, textile production today accounts for 10% of the global carbon dioxide output. So that's more than all international flights and shipping combined. And only a fraction of what's being manufactured is getting recycled. So 87% of the total fiber input that we're using is ultimately incinerated or sent to landfill. So it's really clear that we can't carry on as business as usual. We're depleting very limited resources, and we're producing huge quantities of waste. So encouraging repair, refurbishment, reuse, resale is one approach. So for example, here, this is Retuna. It's a recently opened, completely second-hand shopping mall in Sweden. So all stores sell items of pre-used or pre-loved furniture, all sorts of different product categories. And once products reach the end of their first lives, circularity is a really key concept. So this is talking about keeping our textiles, keeping our materials in closed-loop systems to be remade again and again. So we work with some huge brands, and we're lucky enough to go into their design teams and activate projects with them. And often we find when we talk about things like circularity that designers are saying, I don't really know what that means, and I don't know how it relates to my day-to-day work. And we're really passionate about kind of making things, I guess, more inspiring and more accessible. So the framework for Textiles Matter in the display that you see is actually based on a model, a circular economy model that was created by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Has anyone heard of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation? There's a couple of nods. You're all looking quite shy today, quite tired on day 2. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation is an organization, a really amazing global organization that helps support major corporations shift towards more circular approaches. And they define that within the circular economy, there is these 2 cycles in relation to materials, the technical cycle and the biological cycle. So if we think about materials that are human-made, so sort of synthetic, technical, human-made materials in the technical cycle, and if we think about biological materials, so materials directly drawn from nature that can ultimately degrade, hopefully with no impact, can go back into the soil, basically, in the biological cycle. So if we think about what we wanted to present within Textiles Matter, is that there is no kind of good or bad material. It's not like natural is good and synthetic is bad. Often, for example, plastics get demonized. But plastic is not a bad material because it has the capability to be infinitely melted and remade. So if we can keep it in the technical cycle, so it's all about sort of thinking about materials not as static objects, but in a moving, constantly dynamic system, thinking about where it's come from, what's the process of transformation, and thinking about where it can go at the end of life at the very beginning. And that's what we're wanting to present to you at this year's Heimtextil. So we've got 4 themes that you'll see on display in the 4 circles, 2 of which are exploring the technical cycle, so working with human-made materials, make and remake, and continuous. And then across the other side, you'll see that there's 2 themes that are focusing on the biological cycle, so looking at the materials of nature, so from Earth and nature engineered. So in the presentation today, I'm just going to give you a bit more context and a bit more information about those 4 themes. So hopefully, when you go and explore them further, you'll kind of understand the backstory. So make and remake, as I mentioned, this is about exploring the technical cycle, so rejuvenating existing resources such as second-hand or pre-loved material, really about highlighting the benefit of reclaiming, recycling. And this is really resonating with a growing number of conscious consumers who want to purchase things, want to surround themselves with things that have a story and have a sense of purpose embedded. So we've drawn inspiration from designers all around the world, and you'll see there's a series of exhibits within the space. So this is Simona Post, a Dutch designer who's working with various different textile companies like Kvadrat, Vlisco, Adidas, to take their waste, either post-industrial waste or even take-back waste, and turn their surplus into new material. So this is a rug that she's created. So there's some really interesting sort of techniques and on display within the make and remake. So, for example, the work of American designer Erin McQuarrie, who's using a combination of patchwork, overprinting, and overdyeing. On a more industrial scale, you'll see within the space, this is a collaboration between design studio Wrens and global carpet company Tarkett. So Tarkett amassed their carpet tiles that were sort of end of line or effectively waste. And Wrens revived them with this very simple sort of half red pattern that started as a dip and then they found was easier to produce using transfer print. And it's updating that kind of carpet and allowing them to be reunited back together to create this kind of patchwork approach. This is the work of French studio Pulture. Again, they're playing with different techniques to sort of upcycle textiles. This is Dr. Romanelli, who is a French designer renowned for his approach to kind of take disparate materials and put them back together. And this is disassembled clothing that's gone to waste, remade into new pieces. Within this make and remake space, you'll also see that there is a series of tables which are displaying, that's effectively the make and remake materials library. You'll see examples of work by the repair shop. And repair and visible mending has been gaining traction, particularly amongst younger generations wanting to learn techniques to actually sort of extend the life of things. And darning or visible mending, giving that sense of kind of I guess that beauty of repair and a connection to longevity. You'll also see the fabric. So this is a designer that is dealing with pre-used textiles at scale to compress them into a brick, effectively, that's being used for various different interior design and architectural applications. And that kind of aesthetic, that sort of assemblage of materials and allowing the color and the texture to come through of what its past life was. Within the make and remake space, you'll also see that there's a workshop activity. So we've invited the Centre for Circular Design, which is an amazing research centre within the University of Arts London. And they're in the space and they're running a kind of rejuvenation workshops. So you can look at using overprint techniques. You can look at designing for disassembly with some of their projects that they've been working on to look at extending life and allowing you to renew. So they have incredible expertise and are working with some of the world's largest brands to really help them think about reusing their resources. So definitely drop by, have a go, have a chat with them. So yeah, this theme is all about sort of encouraging rejuvenation and using particularly overprinting, patchworking, overdyeing to revive materials that we might have otherwise considered as waste. The color palette is this combination. It's joyous, it's celebratory, it's celebrating this kind of revival approach. And this combination of of neutrals, pastels, but also with bright accents, and really just allowing the color of the material of its past life to come through. So the second theme within the technical cycle is continuous. And this is celebrating zero waste. So this looking at closed-loop production approaches that allows materials to remain in completely closed loops, to be made again and again, and really keeping low impact at the front of mind. So for example, we've got on display, this is a chair by furniture maker Circuliform, which is completely recyclable. It's been using plastic materials, it's injection molded, and they have also developed the system in which they can take back the chair at the end of life, and it can be completely 100% remade back into a new chair. This is a sort of bench installation by Kvadrat, and they have a material called Really, which is developed from hospitality textile waste. So bed linen that's soiled and can't be used again is compressed into this sheet-like material. Again, it can be completely disassembled and mulched again to be remade into new material. So the materials that we're displaying within Continuous are all about being made generally of waste, but most importantly in these completely closed-loop cycles, so they can be taken apart and made again with no loss of value to the material. Again, a nice a sort of industrial example of this is this carpet called Origin. And it's made from a combination of Econil yarn, which is a synthetic yarn, and waste from, and the backing, the base is mainly made from a combination of calcium carbonate from the drinking water industry, so a waste product from another industry. And this illustration is basically showing once the carpet is made, the manufacturer has a really great take-back scheme. And I think this is the most important thing to understand about Continuous, is that it's about, this manufacturer is acknowledging its responsibility as the sort of custodian of the material. So not just the point of sale or the point of installation, but beyond that, they're understanding that even after the customer has finished with it, they need to have the connection and the system to be able to take it back from them and put it back into production. So again, this carpet can be infinitely made and remade again and again. So thinking about that full system, and again, how do you engage? And what's quite interesting is that they're finding it's allowing them to develop deeper relationships with their customer, because obviously it extends beyond just the point at which the carpet is in situ. They have to retain that relationship to then take it back again. And that is one of the complexities, but or, you know, again, how does it go back into an existing recycling infrastructure? This is a really exciting material called Circulose, which you'll see on display, developed by a Swedish company that's using denim waste. You'll see within the Continuous space, there's another sort of workshop activity with Smile Plastics. And they're a company that, again, has developed this amazing, completely closed-loop system, and they're using plastic waste for interior applications to create surface. So they're there talking, they've got a variety of samples that you can have a look at, engage with, but again, talk to them about their experience of developing that closed-loop system and how they engage with their customer. So Continuous, in summary, is all about thinking about zero waste, closed-loop production that sees materials kept in cycles that can be made and remade into new products again and again. So it's about thinking about timelessness, thinking about designing for multiple lives. So the color palette is quite minimal, thinking about longevity, and also thinking about color that enables making and remaking. So for example, emphasis on whites, grays, and darker blacks. For example, white, you might have seen the Adidas Made to be Remade collection that can again be continuous in a closed loop cycle. If there is no color, then obviously there's no problem with extracting color or thinking about what the color of the next cycle will be. Or grey is a forgiving color. Often if we're reusing material, it can become this sort of greige color. And again, darker colors will allow for this assembly of pre-existing material. So then, if you look onto the other side of the Textiles Matter exhibit, we move into the biological cycle. And as I mentioned, this is about celebrating the materials of the natural world. So From Earth is trying to explore a real appreciation for natural materials, and really sort of, I guess, promoting a sort of spiritual connection to material. I think it's all too easy to sort of forget, even the benches that you're sitting on here now, or I'm sure all of you have at least one piece of wooden furniture in your home. It's quite easy to forget that that tree has taken about 100 years to grow, and we've become quite sort of divorced from the reality of, how incredible that is, the amount of time that has taken to grow that material. And I think it might sound a bit crazy, but it's quite important to sort of take some time to reflect on that and to actually reconnect with the value of our natural resources. And this is what many of the exhibitors are doing within From Earth. So this is an American furniture manufacturer that has been experimenting with developing their own microforests that they can sustain and harvest carefully using coppicing techniques, and then creating their own natural dyes from this mini forest as well to stain the furniture. And this is a vegan footwear company called Viron, based in France. They're using the rubber they're creating from byproducts from the food industry, and including they've got this trademarked apple skin material, which is combining apple waste with recycled plastic to make this sort of leather-like material. And they've also been exploring natural dyes, and so that their trainers can actually break down organically in compost. And a lot of the examples within From Earth are really exploring this idea of things being able to degrade naturally, but also, sort of most importantly, looking at celebrating the imperfections of working with natural materials. So rather than standardizing color very, very carefully and specifically, actually allowing variation to come through. And you'll see on display, there's lots of examples of companies that are working with innovative natural dyes, so trying to look at gentler, more environmentally friendly ways of colouring textiles. So, for example, Zephyr, who have been working with seaweed as the basis for textile coloration. I hope that you'll spend some time in the From Earth space and have a chat with the guys from Hulster Case. They're a Dutch fashion brand that's working with beautiful natural dyes. They've been developing their own recipes. So they're there on hand. They're dyeing. They're there to demonstrate the process and for any questions that you would like to, or any discussion around natural dyes. So From Earth is very much about sort of collaborating with nature rather than controlling it, and trying to sort of reconnect to, the value of our natural materials. And so the color palette is really celebrating a sort of tradition of natural dyes. It looks a lot brighter here, but if you see it in the space, celebrating things like madder root that gives the sort of pinks and the reds, and marigold that was traditionally used for the yellows, and the indigo dye. And then finally, the last theme is nature engineered. And this is again about sort of elevating the importance of natural material, but looking at it from a more sort of technological perspective. So how there's this really exciting raft of designers and material innovators working with bio-based material, but in a more sort of technological way. So this is Giles Miller, and he creates these lovely surfaces for interior. And formerly, his work was all made of metal or plastic substrates, and he's just developed a new, he's called it the Eco range, and it's material developed with the byproducts of wine, hemp, and coffee industries. So he's working in collaboration with the food industry. And lots of the examples you'll see within Nature Engineered are working with either agricultural waste or food waste to develop new materials. So, for example, we wanted to display a variety of products. This is a suitcase by Boris Berlin, and it's made of a biodegradable plant fiber. This is a cosmetics brand called Heimtextil, which is UK-based but starting to go global. And they work mainly with seaweed and for their products, so they wanted to really be considered about their packaging. So their protective packaging for things like candles is, this is mycelium. I don't know if anyone's seen mycelium packaging. It's mushroom, basically. So it's a grown material. It can grow actually very quickly. It can grow in very small spaces. So if we think about the number of products that people are buying online now and the amount of packaging that's coming into our home, if that could be put into your, your standard food waste bin or your garden compost. And they've also developed their own, what do they call it? They call it Viomer. So their cosmetic packaging is made of a biopolymer that they've developed themselves, which again is compostable. I think one of the important things to say about this type of material innovation is the one thing that needs to happen is a communication piece. There needs to be a messaging with it. Actually, if it's biodegradable, if it's compostable, and can go back into the earth without impact, how does that, what's the system that, what's the optimum environment and that needs to degrade? Does it go in your food waste bin? Do you bury it in your garden? So that's a really important aspect that's not quite been resolved at the moment, that we need to make sure that we're communicating to the end customer. If this is something that can degrade naturally, how does it degrade and what do you do with it at the end of its life? In the architectural sphere, there's lots of exciting material innovation around this sort of nature engineered theme. This is hemp. Hemp is an exciting material. Obviously, it's not a new material, but suddenly being more appreciated. It has a high yield in terms of the surface area. It is quite naturally resistant to pests, so requires minimum pesticides and has low water requirements. So there's lots of different exploration of hemp, both for textile, but then, as I said, for architectural. And this is a company called Margent Farm that are working with Cambridge University to develop hemp carbon fiber, hempcrete, and various different interior materials. This, again, is mycelium. So this is a company producing at scale from Italy called Mogu. It's mushrooms, so mushroom tiles, and you can go and have a look and display. If you haven't, I think it says do not touch, but definitely have a little stroke of it's a really amazing texture. And then you'll see there's the designer Thomas Wiley in the space, and he's created the plant factory. So he's a designer, a French designer, but based in Holland now, who's been working with a really unexpected range of biomaterials for several years, particularly with agricultural waste and food waste. And he's really exploring the potential of regenerative bio-based materials. So again, do go and chat to him. He's extruding his material live in the space. So go and have a chat and find out more about his work. So this is obviously a strong focus on regenerative materials where possible, and really thinking about using technological means to elevate the manufacturing potential and the performance of unexpected raw materials to perhaps increase our palette, and think particularly about what's abundant in nature that we can work with. And in terms of the color palette, it's quite a soft palette. It's obviously focused around the browns, really celebrating like the seaweed green and clay browns. But really, it's about allowing the color of the material to come through. So rather than dictating color, again, sort of working with those colors of nature. So hopefully that's given you some food for thought and some inspiration and a bit more context. And I hope that you'll spend some time going through the Textiles Matter space, engaging with the 4 themes, and particularly talking with those experts that we have at the center of the themes. I'll be standing around here if anybody has any questions, or please do drop me an email if you have any questions or feedback, or indeed if you're interested, you can follow what we're up to on Instagram. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.